Good night, everyone. Welcome back to your favorite live sports show, none other than hashtag this just in. I am indeed the Justin of this just in, and it has been too long since I've had these two gentlemen with me. Like it's been forever. One guy's got a full facial hair, the other one's got full hair, and I've never seen both of these guys like this at all. At all. I mean none other than Blaine Spencer of the Final Whistle and Miles Johnson of Real Talk with NBA. Guys, how is it? How has it been?
How's it going, Justin? It's been a pleasure to be back on here, man. Way overdue. And man, I'm ready to talk some hoops. Get right into it. Get right into it.
Yeah, man, I'm good. Way too long, way too long. I'm almost like trying to think that Miles and I were the last time we were on together was actually.
Yeah.
I I I have to check or let Neil or Marsha do that check up. But I actually believe you're right. What also has felt like it's been too long is Kevin Durant still in Brooklyn. Because guys, it has been over 2 weeks since we heard about the initial trade demands. And guess what? There has been no movement, although it seems that the Nets have talked to everyone from Phoenix to Boston, to Utah, to Miami, to everyone, and Kevin Durant has not moved. Miles, is it in your estimation that we will see Kevin Durant remain in Brooklyn either for the tenure of his 4 year contract or at least for this upcoming season?
See what the Nets are doing right now. They are asking for the farm, for the house, everything that these teams can offer for KD. And the problem is KD wants to go to a contender to win for a championship, but all the contenders are gonna have to load off all their valuable assets to go ahead and acquire him. So I want to see him be back in Brooklyn. I want to see him running back with Kyrie. I heard a report that Kyrie wants to, come back and be a net. Still got Ben Simmons there. You got Nick Claxton. You got Seth Curry. You got Joe Harris. You got a solid team around you. If everybody is buying in, you got a pretty good shot to win a title, especially if people think that you're the best player in the world or at least top three. So I want to see him come back to Brooklyn. Realistically, I do think a team will get desperate before training camp starts and end up sending the house, the farm, everybody for KD. But again, it's going to come down to who folds, the rest of the league, or whether the Nets are going to fold and lower their asking price. But I think they're firm. You saw what happened with Rudy Gobert, 5 first-round picks, basically. I mean, you give up a good bench player in Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly. He's been in the playoffs, so you gave up a lot for Rudy Gobert. Imagine what you're going to give up for Kevin Durant.
Miles, who is, if you had a guess, who would that guy be? Who would that team as willing to give up the farm?
I see the Raptors making that trade. They're the same team that traded for Kawhi Leonard, and people, didn't really expect them to win the championship that next season. So I would say that the Raptors, if anybody, know all about trading for a superstar level guy, and that's the number one target I probably see Kevin Durant going to. He can just hoop there. He's a guy. He don't like all the spotlight. He just wants to hoop. And Toronto, being in a whole different country, that's probably the best case scenario. And to where you're still a contender, you got Fred Van Vliet that's going to still be there, but they'll have to give up Scotty Barnes. But you still have a solid team around you there. So I say the Raptors, the number one contender in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes.
Blaine, does he still? Do you think that the Raptors give up what they said was a non-starter in Scotty Barnes? Is it somewhere else?
I like the Raptors as a they're a true front runner, I think, and people really haven't put them in the sweepstakes because of everyone just thinks it's Miami or it's Phoenix or he's going to stay in Brooklyn. I think Toronto has the assets, but I actually want to throw out a different team that I've been reading a lot of potential, like if it gets deep into like training camp or if he's not dealt before the start of the season. Don't be surprised if he returns home. Goes back to DC. Maybe Wizards. The Wizards the Wizards have enough young pieces that they could throw at the Brooklyn Nets that'll at least give them the attention. They would have to drop down what they want. Because, again, as Miles said, everyone's like, if Rudy Gobert can get that kind of haul from Minnesota, Kevin Durant should be getting like a mansion, like 12 mansions all on the same street right next to each other within everything in regards to a team sending stuff back. But again, and then we have to factor in for Phoenix, the matching Ayton has really put them in a real problem in being able to use him as an asset, not until closer to the deadline, right?
Yep.
So Phoenix is almost taking themselves out of the sweepstakes, at least until the deadline. I think he's going to stay. I think he's going to be in Brooklyn when the season starts. I really do. I don't know how committed he will be a couple weeks into the season, depending on how, because that's the domino, right? If Kevin stays, Kyrie stays. If Kevin's gone, they blow it up, and Kyrie's gone.
Oh, that's facts. Well, so who do you think they'll get? Like, for instance, if he makes a homecoming, like a KD thing, who would you think the Wizards would give up in that scenario?
Everybody but Beal. I really do.
Oh wow!
I think. Let me see. I'm trying to pull up the Wizards roster right now for 2022.
Yeah, because they got Spencer
Dinwiddie's gone.
Oh no, he's not.
Hachimura would be gone. Porzingis they would try to get Porzingis in that deal. I don't know if you could.
I don't think
offload that contract. Vidge is a nice young player. You'd probably try again. Then with Delon, you would probably put probably 5 players and at least 5 picks, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it add up for me. I think DC they would have to drop the price to about what Gobert got, right?
Yeah.
For Utah, for Washington to really be truly in the sweepstakes for Kevin Durant. But I don't think Brooklyn is going to get anything better than what Utah got for Gobert. And I think that's the issue when you're comparing 2 players, arguably the best player in the game. And then Gobert's no slouch. He's 3-time defensive player of the year. The man can't score a bucket if his life depended on it, though. So there's 2 different nuances to how this is really unfolding. And because of how valuable Kevin Durant is, it's going to be a real downer, I think, for Brooklyn if they're going to actually ship him. So I think he's going to start the year in Brooklyn, and they're going to see how it looks for about a month. And then that'll be an idea. If they start off well, they'll keep it together. If they can't figure it out and they look like a total disaster because neither Kevin or Kyrie really wants to be out there on the court, they'll blow it up.
I think, like you all said, I honestly believe that the likelihood is he has to stay for at least a season. Because as you both mentioned, the Rudy Gobert trade just messed everything up. Like, when you get 5 first-round picks and then the haul that you got for Rudy Gobert, and the 2 men just are not in the same class. You're talking about an all-time top 20 player in Kevin Durant and then Rudy Gobert. Like, gulf is so massive. And for what Utah got, Sean Marks is right to ask for what he's getting, because before I thought maybe it's a bit too much. But when you compare that to Rudy Gobert trade, what are you asking? What should Brooklyn expect? Nothing less than an all-star and a bevy of picks. I think that should really be the starting price. And unfortunately, as y'all mentioned, I thought we would have tried to sign and trade Deandre Ayton in the situation. The problem is Brooklyn apparently wants nothing to do with Deandre Ayton, even though that's a conversation for later on. But it seems like Brooklyn wanted no part of him and wanted Devin Booker, which allows me to segue perfectly into the next segment.
Well, I want to say one thing before you jump to the next thing.
All right ahead.
Especially when we also have to look at Miami, right? The other front runner. They can't ship Bam. They can't use him because of Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
He can't be a part of that deal because they can't be on the same team. So, like, I feel like every team that at least the top two that Kevin wants to play for, they don't have enough to give Brooklyn to really incentivize them to pull the trigger on the deal. Because then you still have they're creating Brooklyn's like we're giving Kevin to a contender, and they're gonna have a big three in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo if this actually goes through, right?
Yeah,
And then
like,
And then the thing is, if I'm Brooklyn, any trade with Miami has to start with Bam for me. And obviously, as I
you
can't
got to
take
figure
off
out how to
Bam,
get rid of Simmons. Then you got to incorporate so many other teams. You would
yeah.
probably need at least a third or a fourth team.
And like you said, teams aren't gonna be trying to help the Heat basically build a big three. Like, you're not gonna be like, oh, yo, let me just give up my pieces so y'all can have a big three. Like, I'm not about to help you out just so you could have Kevin Durant on the number 1 seed of last year. Like get out of here with that.
If we
So,
think, if we think
it's gonna be
Kyrie's
hard for that.
stock is low right now, imagine how low Ben Simmons' stock is right now.
Oh,
Like, look at that.
Don't get me started on him. I can go. That's right on my alley.
Don't get the Philly guy going. I know.
oh, we're gonna get that going in 2 segments. So I brought Miles on the show for a reason, huh? But before we get there, though, Miles kind of hinted at it. Did Brooklyn kind of overprice themselves out of a realistic trade? Because as much as Kevin Durant mentioned Phoenix, they said the starting has to be Devin Booker. Then you heard them talk to Toronto, and Toronto said that you're not getting Scotty Barnes. And they looked at Minnesota, a situation where they asked for Anthony Edwards. So, Miles, has Brooklyn overpriced themselves out of a realistic trade for KD? And I'm going to throw this one in because I did to ask you all this intentionally. Was it intentional for them overpricing Kevin Durant out of a realistic trade?
Definitely. I think they want I feel like the Nets, they want Kevin Durant to stay on their team. They signed him to a 4-year deal. It's not like he's on a 2-year deal, a 1-year deal. It's not like they have to trade him or else next season he's gonna be, gone for nothing. You can wait this out. I don't think Kevin Durant is gonna pull a Ben Simmons and not play into training camp. That's just not his. You can say what you want about KD, but not being a leader. But in terms of not playing, that would be real low for him to do. So I don't really see him doing that. So they had that leverage there. You signed a 4-year contract. It's not like you're gonna be off the books next season. And they're gonna ask a lot. Kevin Durant is a top 20 player of all time, probably top 15, top 5 talent wise. You can't give up role players and draft picks for Kevin Durant. You have to at least start with getting an all-star player and some draft picks as well. Would you get they want 2 all-stars. Yeah, I don't know if they'll get 2 all-stars, but 1 all-star and probably another good role player and some draft picks. That's a good package for Kevin Durant. But if they're not getting that, they're getting, these OG Ananobis and Pascal Siakams. They're not now. If they got Jalen Brown, that's something different. If they get I'm trying to figure out who else. Maybe people haven't talked about the Anthony Davis thing. I think in terms of if Anthony Davis is healthy, he's the best available player that they can get. Even I'll probably say if Anthony Davis is healthy, like with him and Jalen Brown, I still have Anthony Davis over Jalen Brown. So in terms of healthy Anthony Davis, you could do that. Now I know that would make Bron just like the happiest man in the world. I don't know how KD would feel about helping Bron get some rings, but you never know what could happen. But that's also a deal that could be left on the table. But I don't know if the Nets would want to help the Lakers out, help Bron out in that aspect too.
I'd say this. I brought it up on my show the other day. I did like that Jalen Brown trade for both teams, actually. Someone asked me if I was crazy, but I'm like, if you have a chance to get Kevin Durant for Jalen Brown, Robert Williams, and picks, don't you do that? And I mean, Robert Williams is great and elite defensively as he is. You can find rim protectors just about anywhere. and Jaylen Brown, for as good as he is, as a young player he is, it's not Kevin Durant's level. Granted, Boston did reach the NBA Finals with that team and was up 2-1 at one point in time. So, Blaine, honestly, in a situation like Boston or otherwise, do you think the Nets overpriced KD on this trade market, and was it intentional?
I mean, again, this is all going to come back to Gobert, right? It's not like 5 players and 5 picks just for Rudy Gobert. Like, I mean, and like I have the trade up now because I know we're talking Utah later, but like it's not like they were these players that were a part of this Minnesota trade were scrubs, right? You got Malik Beasley, nice 3-and-D player. You got Pat Bev, who is honestly the most tenacious defender in the NBA, also the biggest agitator in the NBA. Jared Vanderbilt, solid role player for them on that team. I think he was a starter for them, which is saying something. Walker Kessler, who they just drafted, I don't know much about him. He's a young talent, like out of Kentucky. And then Bolmero, don't know. And then 5 picks, 4 of them that are first rounders. It's like, how?
And Kessler is their first round pick too, so that's
Kessler
5.
is their first round pick of this year, right? Exactly. And then they do a pick swap in that other year. So I can't say that they're not overpricing him because of what Utah got, but I think that's also the issue, though, is that Kevin is so adamant on the select teams that he wants to be on, and Sean Marks is trying to do his best to accommodate that for him because he's a superstar and he deserves, if he wants out, to at least go to a place that he knows instead of just going to some random team. If Charlotte just for some reason just ended up throwing LaMelo, everybody at him and just did it that way. So I really, it's hard, right? So they are going to have to drop the standard to what Miles is saying, probably about a couple decent players and a couple picks if they're really going to ship him, which is why I don't think he's going to get shipped, because I think Sean Marks knows that if he's getting rid of Kevin Durant, he's getting rid of Kyrie, he's got to be at least have something for his future, right? He can't.
Right.
It can't just be.
They can build around him. Even though I've been talking really crazy about Ben Simmons, they could just. What you got to lose? You might as well build around Ben Simmons at this point. Wait, what do you got to lose? I mean,
right?
you lost KD by lose Kyrie,
but
you got
to look for a ton of shooters, right? That's how Ben Simmons is successful. You gotta.
You already got Steph Curry. You already got Joe Harris.
They got Joe Harris. They got Seth Curry, right? They got Patty Mills came back, so you have 3 there. You get
they just need some wings.
So like, if we do, let's just look at it. Let's just say they do Miami. Hero's got to be a part of the deal, right? That's a mandatory. You probably get another shooter. You try and get Duncan Robinson in there. So there's 2 shooters. I'm just going based off of if you're going to build around Ben.
That's a bad contract.
That is a awful contract. And the man did not play in the postseason at all for that contract.
The man did not play in a situation where Tyler Hero was hurt for half of the conference finals, guys. Just think about that for a second. How bad that Duncan
That's just because of how bad he is defensively.
He can't defend. Like, it's just terrible.
They were when he had to play in that series, Spoelstra went zone that entire 2 or 3 minutes that he was on the court because he knew that he was getting beat off the dribble every time the ball was going against him, as he was the primary defender.
That's facts.
I mean,
I don't know, KD.
I mean, that's Kevin's going to be stuck. I think he really is, because Marks is not going to back down. I don't think he's going to budge.
So given that, guys, I think we all agree that for at least a part of the season, Kevin Durant is going to be on the Brooklyn Nets, even though I think Miles believes that they'll cave at some point. but doesn't that make them title contenders? And sorry again here, Blaine. I have to start with Miles as a Philly guy because I really want to get him with Ben Simmons here.
Hey man, that's fine. My team already just won the chip again, so we good. You guys kick back. Y'all talk ball. I'm good.
And by his team, he does mean the Golden State Warriors. So I give Blaine, it's on his own show, I give Blaine all the congrats and his flowers. So again, right here, he's on my show. Congrats, the 2022 Golden State Warriors. Miles, they have Ben Simmons, arguably the most versatile defender outside of LeBron James. That means they're not playing all these small defensive liabilities anymore. You've had, and for whatever Kyrie Irving is worth, he's still one of the most efficient scorers in the NBA and a top 20 of all time in Kevin Durant. Miles, does this not make the Brooklyn Nets a title contender for the 2022-2023 NBA season?
The roster currently constructed. Yeah. The roster currently constructed should win a championship this season. It should. Is the overwhelming favorite? No. But are they right up there with Milwaukee? Yes. Now, would I still take Milwaukee just because Giannis is head and above shoulders the best player in the world? I would. But let's not act like this Brooklyn squad, given the fact that people call me crazy that I said Kevin Durant is not a top 5 player. If that is so crazy, then a top 5 player should be able to make this team a championship contender. Luka Doncic took the Mavs to the conference finals with the same guy people said was overpaid. He didn't deserve $100 million contract in Jalen Brunson. Jokic took the Nuggets. I mean, at least they got a game against the Warriors. He didn't have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. You already know with LeBron James. I mean, look, if he had Kyrie and all them shooters, he would do work. He would do work. So even Steph Curry. So I think all those players I mentioned would love to be in maybe aside from Steph Curry, who's in a better situation, but all those guys would love to be in the same situation Kevin Durant is in, having all the shooters around him, having solid, very good players around him, especially if they all play or people. I've talked about Ben Simmons, been on rants about him. He's still a 3-time All-Star. At the time, not gonna lie, before his playoff meltdown, I was one of his biggest advocates to say that he should be Defensive Player of the Year. I would be like, how could you give this guy Rudy Gobert Defensive Player of the Year, and he can't, bro? I mean, he can't guard anybody on the perimeter, and it's a perimeter league. I don't want to get started on that. So the Nets have a very good shot to win the championship, but that's if everybody buys in. And I think Kevin Durant has waving off the white flag too soon. Too soon. I mean, come on, just run it back one time. If y'all don't win next season, all right, all right. But what this tells me is that they saw Ben Simmons in the gym and they were not convinced. They were not convinced. They were not convinced. They were like, oh no, this guy is not doing nothing. He's not doing nothing. We are not saved. We're not saved. And again, before they got James Harden, they had Jared Allen, All-Star. They had Karis LeVert, who has been putting in work. Spencer Dinwiddie has been a vital part in helping that same Mavs team last postseason get to the conference finals. So gave in a lot to basically, give that up for James Harden, then basically get, for trade James Harden for Ben Simmons and all of that. So they basically have looked at that return on their investment and been like, oh no, that don't look too good. So that says something about Ben Simmons, the fact that both Kyrie and KD aren't pleased and would rather go somewhere else than run it back with him.
Same question, Blaine. All that talent, KD, Kyrie, Ben Simmons, is this a title contender in the East?
I wouldn't put them as like the front runner. I would still easily put Milwaukee probably there right now. I'd probably put them behind Boston still, especially now with they got with the move for Brogdon, right? That gives them a true point guard now. I think that was Boston's biggest issue. So they've got. I would probably put them in tie for third with Miami, right? So you put them in that. That's still third, fourth best team in the East. It still puts you right in there, at least in the conference semifinals. You got to win 2 series to get it done. There shouldn't be the issue of not trying to run it back. But I think Miles makes a great point. What are they seeing in the gym that's telling them red flags, right? Or is it just Kevin being mad that they didn't extend Kyrie and that's his boy, and I think they're just like, all right, let's just scrap it. I mean, Kyrie's on a 1-year deal. He's on a prove it year, right? That's what Brooklyn wants. I think that's about like every analyst probably thinks that he deserves with how everything's been unfolding with Kyrie the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Show up 1 year. Show me that you can play 60 games, right? You've done that, I think it's something like 4 times in his entire NBA career that he's actually made it 60, 65 games in a season. Like, that should be your target. Like, prove the money, and then you're going to get the bag next year.
Yep.
But, like, so they are a contender, right? But the team can't stop a cold. They really can't. They're going to have to drop 140 just to win with this roster. I mean, Ben Simmons can cover up a couple holes defensively, but he can't cover up a lot of those holes that they were showing on the defensive end.
They play street ball. They just play street ball.
That's what it is.
To be honest.
It's pick up to them, and they're just like.
And it should have been like, when you heard that Kyrie was like, heck, we can just coach ourselves. That should have been the red flag and been like, oh, no, they actually believe. They actually believe that they can coach. Like Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time. He still had the arguably greatest coach of all time, Phil Jackson, drawing up the triangle, making plays to get him open. Like he listened to his coach. Yeah, I was trying to play Rutgers, Rutgers Park out here. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
And it's ISO ball. They got no movement. Steve Nash, great player. Great player. And you saw him out on the court as a floor general when he was, but he can't make an adjustment if his life depended on it in the middle of a game. He can't.
No.
And I kid you not, Brooklyn was in every game against Boston in the second half, let alone for most of them in the fourth quarter. And Ime Udoka took Steve Nash to school in the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter. To school. And Boston was the worst team down the stretch in the playoffs, offensively and defensively. And Boston took Brooklyn to school at the end of games. And in the rest of the postseason, Boston was the worst team at the end of games. That just goes to show how dysfunctional the team is. They're so individually oriented and have no team dynamic. And if they can't figure that out this offseason, I mean, talent alone, you got to consider them as a contender, right? Yeah, Kevin Durant, Kyrie, Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, Patty Mills. The team can easily drop 140 a night. That's not the issue. The problem is that they might be giving up 150 on the other end. So,
points here, Blaine. Now, talent-wise, I agree with you all right. This is a title contender for basketball played on paper, right? You got Kevin Durant, walking bucket at 7 feet. Kyrie Irving, who I keep telling people outside of Steph Curry, may be the most naturally, or not naturally, but the most skilled guard I've ever seen outside of Steph Curry. Like, there's nothing on the court like Kyrie scores from all 3 levels extremely efficiently, except for his defensive inefficiencies. Kyrie Irving is a very, very good offensive player. Then you go Ben Simmons, for as bad as he is, not one to shoot and not having any range. Guy can legit mark 5 positions on the floor. You have Seth Curry, you have Patty Mills, you have ability to space the floor. Joe Harris when he comes back from that injury. But Blaine, you hit on it. It's just too much dysfunction for me to call them a title contender. You have your best player does not want to play in the franchise anymore because they did not extend Kyrie Irving. Whether it's personal reasons or injuries, Kyrie Irving never plays a full season. For whatever reason, I don't even know if he has a commitment level to basketball that is fitting of an NBA player. You have Ben Simmons, who has not played basketball in 2 seasons now. He kid like, and I don't know what stop to put on it, but the rumors are there that he quit on LSU. We saw him quit on Philadelphia, and he didn't even try for Brooklyn. You left your teammates out to dry in a situation where you did not even attempt to take the court. And then the biggest problem of all, Blaine just talked about it, may be the head coach. You brought a first-year head coach who has no experience, whether coaching mini basketball or pee-wee basketball, high school, college. He's not been an assistant on anyone's bench. And you threw him into the Wolves on a walking title contender, and then you expected something else but this dysfunction. Like, we sat down and saw him against Udoka, and you would swear that you know, Udoka was the one who's a two-time MVP and has a brilliant basketball mind. Like, I have never seen a man outcoached so badly like Steve Nash was in that series. Could not make a single adjustment, does not care about what happens on the defensive end. And quite frankly, as much as Ben Simmons should improve them on that end, you still have so many liabilities. You have Kyrie Irving, you have Patty Mills, you have Seth Curry. These are small guards who are not just small, but are awful playing defense. Head coach doesn't know what he's doing. Your best player doesn't want to be there. Your second best player is at odd ends with the franchise, does not turn up for work, as Stephen A. Smith would say. I am not sure. And then the X factor in it all is a guy who may or may not want to play basketball and just collect checks. I want to see it on paper. If we just call these names and put 5 names or to run basketball, this probably could win a title. But all 3 of us would watch basketball enough to know that's not enough. That really is not enough. Go ahead, Miles.
No, and I think, I don't want to make everything about LeBron. LeBron this, LeBron that. But I do think that this shows that it's not that easy to just get a bunch of good players, and win a championship. It shows, it shows that LeBron's the first guy to, win a championship on 3 different teams. People say, "Oh, that's easy. You can just get some superstars." It's not that easy. It's not that easy. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players of all time, and he was not able. You can say what you want to say. In the 3 years, obviously the first year he was injured, but those 2 years he simply just didn't get it done, right? And it didn't work out. And now he wants out. LeBron, everywhere he's been, he's won a championship. So we have to look at, like, it's not that easy to just build a super team and go ahead and win a championship. And what I will say is we're starting to see, especially recently, a lot of super teams aren't working out. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, that's not working out.
And they added now they added a star.
And they
They
add
add John
somebody
Wall.
else, and I still would put Golden State, who is homegrown, even when Klay Thompson was out, stayed down. They developed Andrew Wiggins. They're still sticking with James Wiseman. They drafted Kuminga. I would have them as the favorite for like the foreseeable year in the West. The Bucks, that's everything's in house. The Celtics, everything's in house. I could see why they would. I know personally, I would trade Kevin Durant for Jaylen Brown, but if I'm the Celtics, I'd be like, you know what? We did take the Warriors to Game 6 of the Finals, and our best player and Tatum did not play like the best player in any game of that series. So we have a pretty good shot at running back, especially with another point guard who we traded for to run it back and possibly win the title. So a lot of these teams could be like, why would I try and build a super team or trade my assets for one guy when track history recently in NBA it's shown it's not been working out?
Miles, I got a question for you because I know you got this NBA stuff down to a T. Because especially when it comes to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I've been very adamant that they don't work. It's very clear that we've seen that they don't work. Yes, they made the NBA Finals this year, but you could see this entire postseason that you couldn't get both of them on the same page. It was either one going off or the other one going off. It was never like a true consistent setup. And especially in the NBA Finals, it was one or the other. And I mean, Jason Tatum, you couldn't do anything in that NBA Finals. And especially that was the reason why they were going to blow it up at the beginning, and then they got red hot in the second half of the second half, right after January. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still hope for Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. They're both not even over 25 years old. They're still very young. It feels like because Jason Tatum, he's a one and done. I don't know if Jaylen Brown was a one and done, but it feels like they've been in the playoffs, been in the league forever. I mean, their first postseason, they took Bron to game 7 of the conference finals. So they've got a lot of postseason experience. And while I do think there is a chance that they could be like the Thunder in 2012 that just make it to one finals and never make it back, they definitely have much more experience playoff wise than that Thunder team had. And I do think that Jason Tatum is built from that cloth. Although I didn't like him posting screenshots of him texting Kobe. I thought that was just that was just a little weird to me. But I do think that he's of that cloth to where he's gonna get better. Him, Donovan Mitchell, other guys in this draft class, Brandon Ingram, they've all shown incrementally each year to get better, unlike Ben Simmons. But I think this is a lesson that Tatum can learn from is to get better, to post up more, to get his teammates involved more, not to go 1-on-5 all the time. And Jaylen Brown, I mean, the Celtics lost, but he played very, very well. I'll be pretty honest. He played on both ends of the floor.
On his hometown team, you
Yep.
can tell he had an extra edge because he was playing the Warriors because he's from Cal.
My take on it, and Marsha in the back row is probably tired of hearing me say this because she's a huge Celtics fan. The problem with two of them is that neither of them are good facilitators or natural passers. And that lays the problem. Because the ball has to be in one of their hands. Marcus Smart is not good enough to demand the ball in his hands. Let's just be real about it. Like, I like Marcus Smart, the defensive player. I like the fact that Marcus Smart has grown better as a jump shooter. Marcus Smart does not deserve the ball in his hands for whatever it's worth. The problem comes, he's the only passer outside of Al Horford on the team. So the issue with pairing the two together in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is that when the ball's in their hands, it is like there's no connectivity in the offense. So it is one on whatever the two. And you just saw what Jason Tatum looked like having 100 turnovers in a postseason. Like no other player has ever done that before. And that's because he is not a natural passer, neither Jaylen Brown. And I like the addition of Malcolm Brogdon in that extent. That should help with the connectivity. The problem still remains you still don't want the ball with Malcolm Brogdon more so than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And for them, and I agree with Miles, they're young and they can get better. But for Boston, in my estimation, to make that last leap, and I will say they were lucky that Chris Middleton did not play a single game in that series. Granted, you can only play who's in front of you. I think for Boston to make that next leap, one of them, or if not both, have to get better as passers. They just have to. Because they have to make the teammates around them better, and it just can't be them going ISO every time down the court.
No, definitely. But again, both 25. Imagine what this team could look like when Tatum and Brown are maybe like 28, 29, when they're really, really in their prime. Then that point, I think the front office will, just because Brad Stevens is a coach that has seen them develop and probably has that more belief.
An interesting dynamic. In them. Normally, not many the front office would have they would contemplate to blow it up, right? In a normal,
but they just won the title. I mean, not the title. They just got to the chip.
I mean. Like still, a lot of teams normally would already start looking like.
I would think if they were like a team, kind of like a Utah that was second round every year, kind of like a no man's land, then I could see, like, for instance, if this year they either miss the playoffs, it'd be crazy, or if they like just got the first round, something like that, I could see them want to blow it up. But they have reason to believe
Correct.
now. Oh, okay, gotta trade it for Malcolm Brogdon and put some moves in that they can run it back this year. If they don't run it back this year, I think they'll make some more tweaks, but keeping them that same core of 2 wings, I think is very valuable in this league right now.
So we talked about Boston, but on the other side of this Kevin Durant situation are a lot of teams, including my own Phoenix Suns, who were not able to convince the Brooklyn Nets to take on the center that we clearly or did not seem to want prior to this situation. So, Blaine, I know you have been on top of this. Phoenix Suns were able to trade DeAndre Ayton, but what they also did that shocked people is that they matched the offer sheet that Indiana basically signed him to. Do you agree with this move by the Suns, or should they have looked to have a sign and trade where they at least get back somebody? My name's failing me right now, but Indiana Center, like, should they have looked to pull off a sign and trade instead of just bringing Aiden right back?
Well, I think the issue is that they were looking, and like we've said earlier, like Brooklyn didn't want any part of Ayton in the Kevin Durant trade, right? And the only issue was to try and get him in a 3 or 4 team trade. And a lot of those was Indiana being a part of it in that sign and trade type of deal, that Indiana would get DeAndre Ayton in some retrospect. But I think people were surprised by how all in Indiana went with that offer sheet, right? I personally didn't think he was going to get that big of a max. I thought he was going to get substantially a lot more than what he was making, but I didn't. I did that in. I can't. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something. Let me see if I.
It was a $33 million a year, 4 years.
See, like I
4
thought he was
years,
going to be in about the 25 to 25.
Yeah, I can see doing 25. Yeah,
25 to 28 range, but like $33 million. I think that just that stuff. I think Phoenix, when they saw that Indiana offered them that much, they're like, bleep, basically. You know what I mean? They're like, they were dropping every word in the book, like that, like how much that screwed them over in every aspect, because there was no way a sign and trade was going to get done at that point, because he's like, Indiana's offering me 33. I'm not going to do a sign and trade for 25. You either offer me the 33, or you're going to let me go to Indiana, right? So I feel like at that point, once Indiana offered, I didn't think Phoenix was matching. I really didn't. I thought Phoenix was just going to let him walk. But I think because of the value of what potentially could unfold if Kevin stays and stuff like that, and you get to January, because now he's not available until January to be traded because of this restricted free agency. I think they just pulled the trigger and said, this is almost like their Hail Mary, right? Mm-hmm. In football aspect, like, all right, let's pay the money. You see what happens halfway through the year, give it one more run at it, because we're not going to be able to trade him now. So you see what we got, and you go from there. But we got to remember the last time DeAndre Ayton played was he got benched in Game 7. Benched. And nobody still has figured out the reason why. They said it was an internal matter that and Monty Williams is one of the best coaches in the game, and he keeps everything to his chest. He does not let anything get out, which is one of the best things that Phoenix has in their organization, other than the whole issue with the owner. But like when it comes to the coaching aspect, Monty is really good at keeping everything under wraps, and I don't think we're going to know for a while until maybe Ayton leaves. So going to be really intriguing. I think that the sign trade was the option that they needed to make, but once Indiana offered him $33 million, you knew it was game over in that regard.
Hey, I mean,
sorry for those who chat. It was a 4-year, $133 million deal. And the name I was looking for was indeed Miles Turner because I wanted to get better defensively. Same thing, Miles Johnson this time. Should Phoenix have just, tried to trade and get Miles Turner in that deal? Or do you agree with the straight up match in the offer sheet?
They had to. They had to match this offer sheet. I tweeted just hours before the news broke out. If the Suns let Aiden go for nothing, they have failed Devin Booker, and that's what they would have done because it's like now if you let him go, all you have is Booker and a 37-year-old Chris Paul. Chris Paul has 2 years left at best, and that's being nice at best. So once he goes, it's like, okay, now it's Devin Booker by himself. At least when Chris Paul retires and all that, you still have Booker and eight. And that's still a good building block with the more postseason experience they get. They're still going to be in the playoffs next season. They won 64 games. I'm like, okay, they didn't win the championship. They didn't get to the conference finals. Wasn't like they got bounced out the first round. Yes, it was an upset. It was a terrible game 7 loss to the Mavs, but they won 64 games for a reason. And they got a very good team with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. You give up a building block and Aiden for nothing, you just simply can't do that. So they had to pay him. They had to pay him. But I think this ultimately takes them out of like the Kevin Durant sweepstakes because if Kevin Durant starts playing for the Nets come next season, I think he'll just play for the entire season. I don't see them giving him up at the trade deadline unless stuff just goes totally left. The season goes totally left, and they have to go ahead and just blow up the whole entire team. But I think if they're gonna blow up the team, it's gonna be in the summertime rather than waiting on into the season to where at that point it might not be the same as it is right now. But again, they couldn't just give up Aiden for nothing, and you have to at least support him some way, and let him be paired up with Deandre Ayton. But it's interesting though because Aiden, in his mind, he was prepared to go to Indiana. Now he's coming back, or now he's going to be coming back to Phoenix for a team that he knows didn't want to give him this contract. They just had to, or else it would be really foolish. They would be set back. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays. I don't expect Aiden to not act like a professional, but it's just going to be an interesting dynamic as you want to play for a team that believes in you. You want to play for a team that believes in your potential and all that. And clearly, the Suns do not believe in Deandre Ayton, but they have to save themselves and re-sign him rather than not getting him for nothing.
So here's the thing, right? I agree with you, Miles. Phoenix Suns cannot be in a situation where they lost him for nothing. It just can't happen. That would be crazy, especially when you invested enough in this kid. Like to lose him for absolutely nothing would be madness. But I think from the moment that Brooklyn said they wanted no part of DeAndre Ayton, that you had to find a taker to trade. And it may sound weird. Maybe people think Miles Turner is not as good. Maybe he isn't. But I felt like you had to find a way to get Miles Turner. And I'll explain why, right? First, let's hit the obvious. Whether it's James Jones, though I believe it's more Monty Williams, the organization does not believe in DeAndre Ayton. And guys, I'm going to shock you. Neither do I. His numbers look nice. Probably 16, 17 career points per game, 10 rebounds a game. Sounds all nice and good, right? But when you watch enough Phoenix Suns basketball games, real holes in DeAndre Ayton's game. And the first thing is he's an extremely dependent player. It is not like a situation where you give the ball to DeAndre Ayton and he's going to get his own. He gets it from A, the attention that Devin Booker and Chris Paul create, and B, for the fact that they assist and, really make things easy for him. And my biggest problem with Ayton is that he plays like a big who is not a big. And I'll explain. Very often teams are willing to switch out their bigs onto our guards. And there's a reason. They know Deandre Ayton is not going to punish them on mismatches. Yes, he's going to score and he scores very efficiently. But the way in which he scores, teams are not afraid of that. And if you watch enough, Ayton will get a mismatch and he's going to turn over this left shoulder, put up a nice right baby hook. More often than not, it scores. But he's not putting anybody in foul trouble. He's not dunking on anyone. He's not playing with any force whatsoever. And if you're going to take a hook shot or fadeaway jumper, teams are going to live with that because it doesn't matter who you put, you're likely going to score it. So teams will say, well, meh, you're not putting us in foul trouble. You're not forcing us to stay home. You're not dominating the paint. You see it time and time again. Dallas was not afraid to make switches. They let Deandre Ayton home in the NBA Finals. The Milwaukee Bucks completely ignored Deandre Ayton and said, well, if you're going to score, so be it. We'll live with that. And they were not even afraid of him on the other end because Deandre Ayton does not block shots. Deandre Ayton does not change them either. I think that's where Monty Williams is growing frustrated. You are athletic, and Deandre Ayton is indeed athletic for his ability, for his size, but he's not dunking with force. He's not scoring on and ones. He's not putting teams in foul trouble. He's not attacking the offensive glass. He runs and gets back on defense, I guess, which now in today's NBA you're taught. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't alter shots at the rim. I don't think that this is the answer for the Phoenix Suns. And in getting Miles Turner, at least you know you have a guy who's going to block shots, who's going to alter shots at the rim, and who can stretch the offense out to the three-point line. Because as skilled and I don't want to say soft, but not physical as DeAndre Ayton is, DeAndre Ayton doesn't take three-point shots. At least Miles Turner does. So that spaces the floor even more because as good as Phoenix is offensively, Phoenix doesn't really take that many threes. They are a mid-range team. And when you take mid-range shots by volume, that's not really a good offense. So I agree with you, Miles. You couldn't afford to lose DeAndre Ayton for nothing. You had to sign him. But I thought in signing him, you had to sign and trade because for all of the stuff I may have said about DeAndre Ayton, he is a good player. It is certain that Monty Williams does not believe in him. And then there's that elephant in the room. Blaine talked about he got benched, but Blaine refused to mention that he was asked to go back in the game and he refused. He downright refused to go back into the game in Game 7. And as y'all both mentioned, both James Jones and Monty Williams said this is something in-house. And then this is the team that refused to then give him the max he was looking for the start of the season, all through the duration of the season, and it forced their hands that Indiana gave him that offer sheet. I don't know that bringing DeAndre Ayton back is the answer to this team because there are some discrepancies, there's some huge holes that we're going to talk about right now. So, Blaine, I'm going to start with you. Do you think that the title window in Phoenix is closing right now?
I do. But I also want to give one last thing on the Ayton thing that I totally forgot in his contract. He can veto any deal through the first year of this contract. He's got the Mutombo way. He said if he doesn't want to go, he doesn't have to go, right? So he's got the powers in his hands now, which, again, as Miles said, Phoenix's hand was forced with how when I think this is it for Chris Paul. I think many of you guys agree it's either this year or next year. It's going to be that's it for Chris Paul. So you got to leave him with something with Booker to at least kind of be somewhat satisfied with on a playing level perspective. But I think the ship has sailed. I think it's already over, or at least this is going to be the final. This is easily the final push at it this year. But I think this past season was their shot. I mean, you're in the finals a year ago, 2 years ago now.
I think the finals against Milwaukee was their shot.
Yeah,
that was a huge feat.
Yeah, for sure. The last 2 years have been their best opportunities, right? You're in the finals, and you lose you're up. and you're up, right? You're up 2. And then 2-0, and then Milwaukee goes 4 in a row because Giannis took his game to a level that no one else can get to other than probably LeBron at this point. And then this past year, you're the best team in basketball. The West is pretty much wide open, even more this year than it was the year before. This past year than it was the year before. Denver, injured. LA, injured on both sides, right? Clippers and Lakers both injured. Then you have the aspect of you have a Dallas team, right? You have a Memphis team that's extremely young, talented. My lights just went out. That's great. Memphis, very young. A Warriors team that was probably that you could argue was the only true contender against them. But we had, as a Warriors fan, I had plenty of question marks whether or not we were going to be a contender this year with Clay coming back. Even with we had the emergence of Jordan Poole, we didn't think Andrew Wiggins was going to be the second best player on this team in the playoffs. So many different things had to go right for us too. And now you have all of these people coming back this year in the West. Well, everyone's going to be a lot healthier. Well, that's what you hope. Knock on wood, right? So you can have, and then you have a team like Minnesota. They make their move for Rudy Gobert. They basically pushed all their chips into the table now for the next couple seasons. The West has only gotten tougher in these last 2 years than what the last 2 shots that Phoenix has had. So I personally think it's done.
Go ahead, Miles.
Yeah, I mean, it's over. It's over. I mean, I like to, have some debate, but it's simply over. I mean, the same Phoenix team. Let's just be honest. They had the luckiest run ever. I mean, you talk about last season. Anthony Davis is out. I firmly believe if AD was not injured after Game 4, the Lakers would have won that series. Then they played the Nuggets, who didn't have Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. I forgot who else they played, but in the without Kawhi. So I mean, they had a break for every single team, in the playoffs last season. So that was really their year, especially with Giannis, who he didn't play like it, but he wasn't 100% in that finals. So they had the best shot to go ahead and win the finals last season. Now, like Blaine said, now you got the Nuggets coming back with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. come back with some vengeance. You got John Morant and the Grizzlies that got more experience under the belt. You got the Warriors, who I would still have over the Suns right now. You have the Lakers that I feel like they'll be better than they were last season, regardless if they have Russell Westbrook on that team or not. So they got the Mavs that with Luka. Could he be a MVP candidate? He gets better year in and year out. So there's too many teams, and the Clippers I didn't even mention who just got John Wall. And people forget that Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, is a top 5 player in this league. So this, this team for the Suns, I feel like they missed a window. Can they still be a playoff team, a top 4, top 5 seed? Definitely, definitely. But in terms of being a favorite, heck no. I mean, I thought the Suns had a real shot against Golden State. But no, I learned now Golden State is just head and shoulders, just above anyone in the West. Unless we see something crazy out of the Nuggets or maybe like the Clippers, I don't see any other team in the West that's on that like tier 1 level, and everybody else like on like their other tier right now. So the Suns had their best shot, but can they still be competitive? Can they still take a Mavs to a 7-game series, take the Grizzlies to a 7-game series, take, some of these other tier 2 teams in the West, the distance they definitely can. But in terms of competing with the Golden States, the Nuggets, the Clippers, I don't see them doing that.
And I would say that you have the two LA teams as probably the biggest challengers, right? But their issue hasn't been on the court. It's been that they can't stay on the court with health. If they can get the health issue out of the way, you got LeBron, AD, and then I think they'll figure it out with Russ and at least figure out a role for him where he can actually be himself.
I know.
And then with the Clippers, you have John Wall now, and he's had basically 2 years off, so he's going to be at basically rearing to prove himself again as an all-star caliber player. Paul George, Kawhi, are they going to be able to stay healthy? And people sleep on how Reggie Jackson is as a player. I mean, he ain't a scrub. He's going to probably be their sixth man. He's right now, I would put him as the front runner, sixth man of the year. You can make that valid argument now that because I think Reggie Jackson will get moved to the bench with John Wall coming in. But
I think John Wall may start on the bench, but as a conversation for another, I think so. But so here's the thing, right? You're not gonna get many Phoenix Suns fans bigger than me. They may be one in the chat, but not very many. I've been rooting for this team since 1992. So what I'm about to say is going to be very hard, but it's a very boring segment, and the answer is yeah. This window is probably closed.
Just because you're depressed because you guys had your chances. That's not a valid answer. This is you just in the fields right now.
No, like I think our greatest chance was going up 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep, that was a chance.
That was a chance there, and I think not being able to convince Brooklyn to take Deandre Ayton with somebody like Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson with some picks for Kevin Durant was the nail in our coffin. I think that was the nail, and for the time that Indiana forced their hand into signing or matching that offer sheet for Ayton, I think it was just it. Like, because my friends will tell you, I had Phoenix as the biggest front runner to get Kevin Durant. I said there's no way anybody could match an offer of DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and some picks. Like, we had the package. And the moment that Brooklyn said we don't want DeAndre Ayton, I think the window's shut. And I'll explain what DeAndre Ayton is not the answer. And y'all mentioned it before, like Chris Paul is not going to get any better here. And when you see the last two playoff exits from Phoenix, teams that have beaten Phoenix have figured out what to do with Chris Paul. And people say, oh, but his injury or he just happened to fade off. And that's not giving credit to how teams played Chris Paul in beating him. We went up 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks. And I don't know why it took him so long. But the moment that Budenholzer decided to put Drew Holiday on Chris Paul, box him in, stop him from going left, and stop him from going right, because that's where he makes his living, at that elbow to the right side. For the moment, he said, all right, Drew, send him left, and let's box him in and live with contested jumpers. We're going to stop him from getting to rim. Series is over, and Chris Paul looked dreadful. And I know people thought, all right, well, that was just a one-off situation. And they saw Dallas do the exact same thing. Phoenix went up 2-0, and Jason Kidd said enough is enough. We're going to force CP3 left, take away everything else, force him to hit contested jumpers over our players, and live with that. And Chris Paul was not able to do it. Like, it was as simple as forcing him left away from his favorite right elbow, and men said, well, show us what you can do, when that was the end of Chris Paul. And now Chris Paul is, 37, 38? It's a situation that Phoenix needed to find another scorer. Phoenix needed to find, and I tell people all the time, Chris Paul taking over fourth quarters is not by chance. It is by strategy. It's like, you can't expect 37-year-old Chris Paul to go for 4 quarters. He lets everyone get in the game, and he reserves his best for the fourth quarters. The problem is, when you are playing in the playoffs, you are no longer playing bad teams. You are playing good teams night in and night out, who have studied you. Every team in the NBA knows what the other wants to do. And in a playoff scenario, adjustments are going to be made. And unfortunately, for the last 2 playoff series, whether it be Monty, whether it be Chris Paul not physically being able to do what he could prior, the Suns were not able to adjust to teams defending Chris Paul a lot better than they started the series with, and that has been the biggest downfall of the team. It means that the Phoenix Suns needed a younger scorer to complement Devin Booker. Obviously, that would have been, I mean, not younger than Devin Booker because Kevin Durant is up there in age as well. But you needed another shot creator outside of Chris Paul because Mikal Bridges, um, Jay Crowder, I mentioned Deandre Ayton. None of these players you ask or you expect to create their own shots because that's not who they are. You needed another dynamic shot creator because Chris Paul is getting up in age and can no longer do it against defenses that are focused against him. It pains me to say this. I had James Jones on the show. I am the biggest Suns fan I know. I think the window is closed.
Yeah, and the difference between the Suns and the other teams in the West, I'd give an edge over them. The Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, they have that guy as their best player. They got Steph Curry. Clippers got Kawhi. The Nuggets got Jokic. Devin Booker is an all-star. Is he that super duper? Is he a top 10 player? No. Chris Paul, I think at this stage of his career, he's probably best suited as the third best player on a championship team. He might be able to be the second best player, but that would mean that Devin Booker would have to take another leap and be in that Luka kind of category of doing a lot of things, not just scoring wise. So I think that in terms of having that it guy, that can take you game in and game out to get these W's, they don't have that when these other teams, these other contenders in the West, they've got that guy. They've got that top 6, top 5, top 7 player on their roster right now, which the Suns they got some good players. They got some all-stars, but do they have a superstar, a super duper star? No. And that's just an NBA, you're gonna need at least one. You don't need to have 2 or 3, but you're gonna need to have at least one if you want to, really compete for a championship title.
I brought up something on Facebook the other day. Since the Detroit Pistons won their last title in 2004, every single title since then has been won by one of less than 10 superstars. I think if you count them, Tim Duncan, LeBron James,
Kawhi,
Shaquille O'Neal,
KD, yeah.
Kawhi, KD. But I didn't even count KD. I think it is less than, it's either 10 or 11 players there have won a title since 2004. That just shows you that this is indeed a superstar league. And I'm glad that Miles has brought up the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo is indeed the best player in the world. I've been saying
Head
this too
and
long.
shoulders above the rest.
Agreed.
But we're going to close out and we're talking about stars. Now all of a sudden we're hearing after trading one, Utah Jazz are actually open to trading the other in Donovan Mitchell. So Blaine, I'll finish this with you starting.
Wait,
Do
I
you
get
fully
to start a segment? Wow.
do you expect Utah Jazz to move on from Donovan Mitchell this season?
Yes. And I think it's kind of just become inevitable at this point. And you guys know that I've covered Utah a lot this past year, pretty thoroughly, and where I've been located for the last couple of years. We all thought that Gobert was going to get moved, but we really didn't necessarily believe it until it was going to actually get done, right? Because we didn't think that there was much of a market for him, especially he's a non-traditional big man, more of a defensive stopper, not much of an offensive scorer. And then now with the move to Minnesota, you're like, actually, this kind of makes sense with this Twin Towers idea because Cat's not a true prototypical 5. He wants to play more at the 4, so it makes sense. He wants to be more out in the wing now. He's showed more ball handling skills and stretching it out. And I think now Utah has come to the realization that their window has come and gone. And you could kind of start to see it once it all unfolded with the whole Gobert Mike situation and COVID and all that. That kind of created a major disconnect and lack of trust within the team. And I know they were all denying it, but there was a lot of trust issues going in Utah. And then you have the great year, regular season year, you're the 1 seed. And again, like how Phoenix made it to the finals that year, the West was wide open for the taking, and you thought if Utah was going to make it, that was their shot, right? And then you add into injuries. Ingles gets hurt. You feel like the loss of Ingles and then trading him was more of a bigger loss than people realize. He was the real leader on that team. People may not say that he truly was, but the offense really ran better when he was on the court. Was the best passer by far on that squad. No discredit to Mike Conley, but Joe Ingles was clear and above the best passer on that squad. Had to move Mitchell to being more of a primary ball handler. And you started to see the signs that they were trying to not figure it out. And then the issue was in the playoffs in both of these last 2 years, they can't guard. They can't guard. And Royce O'Neal is their best on-ball defender, and he is a mid-level on-ball defender in the NBA, right? He's not like an elite on-ball defender. And it finally showed. And Quinn Snyder made no adjustments. You knew what they were going to do. They were going to blow by. Gobert was going to commit. They're going to get a wide open 3 in the corner. Or you get the ball to the corner, they rotate, you get it one more pass, wide open threes. Threes were the way to beat this team. And Utah, especially that first year when they were the number 1 seed, their 3-point shooting was elite in the regular season. This past year, they were mid-level of the pack from the outside. And the 3-point game really hurt them. You could see it in the Dallas series. They got outscored something like by over 120 points from the 3-point line. So I think Mitchell's going to be gone. I think they're going to have to settle for something less than what they got for Gobert, though. Same thing with the whole thing. I think the Knicks will throw the house. I think that's the real – it's Knicks or Miami at this point from what I've understood. And that the Knicks are going to throw every draft pick they've got to try and land Donovan Mitchell. And try and throw in Toppin. Potentially, I think Julius Randle is going to be the all-star player that's going to be in the mix there. For that, is that enough? Is he a good face for a rebuild? Probably not, but Utah's realized that it's come and gone. And then with Snyder leaving, that was honestly the chip that fell for everything to blow up. As Snyder walked, Gobert's gone. Then after that, they know that with those 3 key components, it's done.
Yeah, they it's funny. I was watching this ESPN segment on First Take, and Brian Windhorst, he was basically like,
"This happening,
this happening," and he called it straight out. Like, you can see the moves that the Jazz are making, the conflict with the coach. The coach wants out. Oh, and the coach doesn't want out. He has left. Rudy Gobert gets traded. They were originally saying Donovan Mitchell is off the table. Then they see this big package for Rudy Gobert. They're like, oh, what could we get for Donovan Mitchell? So I think that they're going for a full rebuild, and that's why they brought in Danny Ainge, is to reconstruct this team. And it's actually a smart move, if you be completely honest, because would you rather? Well, I guess it's up to the fans' choice. Would you rather be in the second round every single year, or the first, be in the playoffs every single year, but not really have a real shot to win a championship? or start over in the hopes that you get that super duper star that can take you over the hump. So I think that's a good question for fans. Like it's a lot of these teams like Portland. They're signing Dame. The Wizards, they're signing back Bradley Beal. They're gonna be in no man's land in terms of maybe being a playoff team, a fringe playoff team, but being good enough to not be like a top 10, to not have like a top 10 pick in the draft, but not being good enough to win a title. So they're making like the right move now to kind of trade their players before, really like kind of like before everything starts moving downhill and all that. And they're going to get the most value out of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert at this point than they otherwise would have had. And I think that him going to the Knicks is something that is going to happen by really before the season starts. I've said that the Sixers should look into a trade, and I still believe that. I don't think Tyrese Maxey is untradeable like Joel Embiid people are talking about, but I do think that Donovan Mitchell will get traded, and if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You can see what they are doing. The Jazz, they are in a full rebuild if they want to say it or not. They're in a full rebuild right now, and it's only a matter of time that they end up trading Donovan Mitchell and just starting from scratch.
And Miles, I can actually answer that question about the fans.
Yeah,
They were from what I've understood, and like the people that I know out of the Salt Lake area, Idaho area, that like Utah is like their squad. They are not happy.
Mm.
They really thought that they could at least give it one more go. But I think the issue was that a lot of from who I've spoken to and stuff like that, that it's because of Snyder leaving that it would be a completely total change of identity. And that's why I think the blow up is happening. If Snyder stayed, they would have given it another go. Right. So I think Quinn Snyder's role in this was a lot bigger than what people realized. So I think like a lot of the fans are upset. They understand it because of if you're going to bring in a brand new first time head coach, do you really want to put Mitchell and Gobert through that and settle for another 2 or 3 years, like you said, of trying to find something that fans can celebrate about, of like making a Western Conference Finals or NBA Finals. So, but no, they were very surprised, especially when everything started to go down.
Mm.
What they said.
Right.
And basically, there's nothing more I can add other than to say, agree with Blaine. What a lot of people didn't realize is how close Donovan Mitchell and Quinn Snyder really were. The moment that Quinn Snyder went through the front door, it was only a matter of time that Donovan Mitchell followed him, because the reports are outside, obviously, because Dwayne Wade has a stake in the franchise. Outside of that, his real ties to the Utah team is Quinn Snyder, because obviously that's the only NBA head coach he's ever known. And that is the head coach that has put all the trust in him, improved him, watched him develop over the time to a point where he put the ball in Donovan Mitchell's hands and let him be the face of the franchise and also the face of the offense. So,
Snyder let the players know there was no indication that he was leaving. None.
Yep.
And none whatsoever. And he just did it. And Donovan feels a little bit betrayed that he didn't at least give him the heads up that he was going to walk.
And I tell you, like, I didn't understand before how close the two really are. So the moment that Quinn was gone, the writing was really on the wall. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure having you all. Unfortunately, Utah doesn't seem that they will have Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell. But we will have these gentlemen back at some point. So, Blaine, first off, would you please tell the people how to find you and what you have coming up next on the Final Whistle?
Absolutely. So you can check us out, the Final Whistle on Instagram, TikTok, Final Whistle Sports Pod on Facebook. You can catch us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we've got it. what we're doing right now is we just actually started our divisional breakdowns for the NFL, starting to really start deep dives, looking at all 4 teams in each division, trying to do record predictions, as well as trying to understand the key additions and understand the offenses and defenses of each teams in the divisions. So just dropped the North, had my guy Justin Marvel as well as Marcus on for that one. I'm trying to get my guy Miles on for the NFC East one. I know we're trying to work out that one so you can talk about his Eagles. So a lot in store coming for this next upcoming summer. So be on the lookout for all of those.
Please go follow the Final Whistle on all those major social media platforms. And the same with Real Talk with MJ. Tell the fans about coming, Miles.
Yeah, Justin, you can follow me at Real Talk with MJ on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, all that. Coming up, as an HBCU student, as a Morehouse student, I love to interview athletes from historically Black colleges and universities. So on the rise, I'll be interviewing some track and field stars from North Carolina A&T, just getting their perspective on, being at HBCU and all that. So look forward to that, and be covering all sports, whether it's boxing. Gonna have some boxing content coming out, some track and field too. Obviously gonna have the hoops, and gonna talk about my Philadelphia Eagles too. So a whole lot of sports, a lot of interviews coming soon. And again, Justin, it was a pleasure being on. Gotta have you back on my show again. Blaine as well. We gotta set some up soon, give you my take on my Eagles, the NFC East, all of that. Gotta have you on my show as well. But man, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely pleasure.
I just want to remind Miles, for as bad as Team USA defeated us in the Caribbean in the 100 meters, we got our revenge via Jamaica, sweeping the women's 100-meter final.
Shelly Ann, I'm gonna have an episode on her. She is just phenomenal.
Out of the blocks, she is just different. She is just different out of the blocks.
I think she is indeed the best in terms of those first 10 meters. She's so bright, like my word.
35 years old after having a big kid. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
I don't know how she is, because I thought that this was Elaine Thompson's time. I don't know how Shelly Ann Fraser-Price is getting even better. I don't know, but watch out for Sharika Jackson. Also, watch out for this space, #ThisJustIn. Please put in the hashtag when you're looking for us. We don't want Max Kellerman on ESPN. You want us right here. #ThisJustIn every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. You can find us on Facebook as well. You can find us on Instagram and a little bit on Twitter. Not as much as these guys, but we try to follow them. So for Miles, for Blaine, I am indeed Justin of #ThisJustIn. Signing out. Thank you so very much. Tune in again another Monday night. Good night.
I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with the king, no matter, you're just the same. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes? Shit.